Hi, I'm Denise. I have 3 letters after my name. They are MOM or ABD. It's not Dr. Sedlacek, not yet. But I'm feeling a little bit anxious because I'm the administrator that y'all hated earlier this morning. I'm feeling honored to be here, so thank you very much, Deborah, for inviting me. And I'm feeling hopeful because when I look at this room and see the commitment and the passion that you have to serving some of our most vulnerable youth, I am energized and refreshed. What are my goals today? To share a little bit about what we do in schools to really deal with trauma kids. And who am I going to ask for help? I'm going to ask for help, if I need it, my colleagues from Baldwin, Whitehall, or some of my former colleagues from Presley Ridge. For those of you that don't know, that's a little advertisement for Sandra Bloom's sanctuary model. And so I'll use a little bit of her work and a little bit of Bruce Perry's work through my conversation today. I've been trained by a lot of great mentors in trauma over the years. And Bonnie McNally Brown, who's a colleague and dear friend of mine, uses the arm. So everyone lift your arm. You're after lunch. Some of you didn't eat your cookies and have your sugar fixed. Your forearm, it can be the brainstem. That's where your survival, it controls your heart rate, it controls your breathing, it controls all of your organs. That's what your brainstem does. If you think of the limbic system, that's your thumb. So fold your limbic system in, that's your thumb. That's your fight, flight, or freeze response. So your limbic system is a security guard. It's what's going to protect you. I'm sorry, I'm moving. I said I wouldn't move. I apologize, Frank. So that's your security guard. Your neocortex are your fingers. So wrap your fingers around your thumb. Your fingers are the teacher. When you are calm and the neocortex is engaged, and Dr. Vetru and Dr. Hughley talked a little bit about that, and the synapses and all of those things, then you can learn. So as teachers, if your students are not like this, they can't learn. What do we do in education? We're all about cognitive processes, problem solving, making decisions. Our kids that are typically developing have a top-down approach for making decisions. Their neocortex is in charge. Our kids that have been traumatized, they make decisions from the bottom up. There are hurt kids, physical sensations, a touch on a shoulder may trigger that abusive response. Their heart rate, their resting heart rate can be 120 to 130 beats per minute when the average child's heart rate should be around 60 to 70. So those are our bottom-up type of kids. What gets in the way? That parents sometimes are clueless. Many of our teachers come from middle-class neighborhoods. Very few of us have seen where some of our kids come from. In Baldwin, Whitehall, we have a very high ESL refugee population. Our kids were born into refugee camps. They've come to the United States. We rank 20th in this state for the number of ESL students. Whereas if you look at Harrisburg or other places, it's a Hispanic population. Ours are Bhutanese, Nepalese, and 35 other languages, some of which cannot be translated. They've never known formal schooling. We have kids from the city, we have poor neighborhoods and kids that move around and that are very transient. Our parents have mental health or substance issues. They lack accessible resources. Some of our families live where there are 6 adults and maybe 10 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment. A lot of what Dr. Vetru talked about with economics and education. But the beautiful thing about our ESL population is they value education. We had curriculum showcases. They put on their Sunday best and their finery, and they were so proud. And so there's a difference in the value that they have to education than sometimes the value of our typically developing American kids. Natural disasters, medical issues, loss. How many of our kids, how many of us Show of hands. How many of us have experienced a significant loss in the last 3 to 5 years? That's trauma. When you have a lot of loss in an early age, we're adults. Our brain is fully developed. Kids about in the 20s, gentlemen, for you, it's like 25 to 29. Women are a little bit ahead with brain development. But we can handle those things. Young children can't handle that. They don't have the cognition to be able to handle that. So that traumatic experiences, and there's a lot of research on in vitro trauma and infant mental health and trauma that occurs with pregnant parents. So how does trauma manifest itself in our students? Distrust, uncontrollable feelings of helplessness, sensory experiences that are triggered by a smell or by a touch or by an environment. Things that we may not have a clue of that are going to really impact our kids. When kids are unable to grasp what's going on around them and can't do anything about it, they immediately go into that fight, flight, or freeze. Our little kids, they run out of the classroom. Our big kids run out of the building. Our little kids curl up in a ball and start sucking their thumb. Those are signs. They put their head down and they sleep. Maybe it's because they're tired or they put their hood up. That's a self-regulation thing, and some of our teachers, take your hood off, you're not allowed to have hoodies on. Or they put their head down because they're so overwhelmed that that's how they're going to regulate, is they're going to fall asleep. Unless teachers and caregivers, of which we are all caregivers, understand the nature of those reenactments, they're going to label the kids as what? Bad? Give me some DSM words. ADHD, ODD, conduct, crazy. Absolutely, aggressive, non-compliant, all of those types of things. Our kids that have been traumatized, that have witnessed shootings, that have witnessed parent abuse, that go hungry, that don't know if their clothing and all their belongings are going to be out on the front lawn, have trust issues with parents, with peers, with caregivers. Their anxiety interferes with their learning. It's not that they don't want to learn. It's that the brain does not allow them to learn because they're living in that hypervigilant state all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Their heart rate is racing. There's some really cool cheap gadgets that you can, test kids' heart rates and their breathing. Some of what we do and what I learned at Craig Academy and Presley Bridge is you look kids in the eye, breathe with me. Everyone take 3 really deep breaths. 3, 2, 1. For little kids, we put a stuffed animal and we lay them down on the floor. What's the worst time of an elementary kid's day? I was secondary. What's the worst time of an elementary teacher or student's day?
Before court time.
Pardon me?
Rest time.
Rest time, which comes when?
After lunch.
Right after lunch. So what we encourage staff to do is turn down the lights, bring in a beach towel, have them lay down, put a stuffed animal on their chest, watch their breathing in our special education classrooms. How can we redesign our classrooms? Because kids want to self-regulate. Are there bean bags? Are there just chill areas or cool down areas or calm down areas or whatever you want to call it? Do they have turtles that they can sit on? You walk into our elementary classrooms, they have the exercise balls because some kids need to sit on that. I walked into one the other day and they had the beach chairs. I'm thinking, yeah, that's where I want to go. But how are we redesigning our classrooms to meet the needs of kids so that we can teach them and they can learn to self-regulate? Because if they're not self-regulating, then they're not learning. And so this is important. We spend a lot of time with our special education teachers and our paraprofessionals looking at trauma, looking at how different disabilities and diagnoses manifest itself. But it's something that, as Dr. G and I were talking earlier, all of our staff need to be aware of, because there are so many kids that we don't know about, that we don't know their stories. One of the most important things that teachers or caregivers or anyone can do is know the stories of the children in our classrooms. It gets much more difficult as the children get older, but the research about schools within a schools that teams should have no more than like 600 in a high school or building, and that you should have no more than 150 students in a learning community where there's a core set of adults that are interacting with those children on a day-to-day basis, so that they know their stories, so that they know the communities in which they live. I love to ride the school bus because it shows me where our kids live. We have school buses that go out to bring our parents to open house nights and community showcases and those types of things, because transportation is an issue with some of our kids. We take programs out into the community centers in our school district because we want that parent engagement. We need to know where our kids live and where they're coming from. We need to know if there's frequent housing changes, and our social workers do a phenomenal job. The homeless population, tracking our homeless kids and making sure that our kids are getting to school, and that we're providing that bus transportation. Chronic health problems that exist, not only with our kids, but with our families. When our children are going home and having to take care of their siblings because of health issues or job issues with their family, those are things we need to know about. Maybe just coming to school was just okay, and I'm not really concerned that they didn't do the homework last night because they were taking care of sick parents or sick siblings or cooking dinner and doing those types of things. What is the mental health and substance abuse? We are at an all-time critical low in crisis situation with mental health in this country. Understaffed, underpaid, no money, no resources, and so that all comes to the school and to the community. There are no beds at Western Site, there are no beds in Clarion, there are no beds in Southwood, there are no beds anywhere. And so you're going to be in for 24 hours and you're going to be released. And they're going to come back to school. And that these are the families and the situations that we have to deal with, because parents do the best they can with the resources that they have. If there's one thing that you take away from today, I would ask that you take that away. Parents do the best they can with the resources they have. Dr. Betru said every parent, no matter whether they're a prostitute or a drug dealer or whatever, wants what's best for their child and loves their child. But sometimes they have very limited resources. Unpredictability and the unknown are two things which will make a traumatized child more anxious, more fearful, and more symptomatic. So how do we control the structures? We control by having schedules, both written schedules and visual schedules, and we get into routines, and we have rituals around our classroom and how it's organized. We establish strong rules that are taught. I believe Dr. Kerr, Mary Margaret Kerr, spoke to you all last year. For those, how many of you have ever heard Mary Margaret Kerr speak? She was one of my early mentors. The second thing that you should write down is Resnick's largest longitudinal study of adolescence. And Dr. Kerr turned this on to me back in 1991. So I am old. Those decades of experience, really do matter. The three most important factors for resilient kids. Number one, a caring adult. Number two, opportunities to belong. And number three, high expectations. When surveyed, who was that caring adult? In over 90% of the cases, it was a teacher, or a school custodian, or a cafeteria worker, someone associated with the school. we have tremendous power to transform the lives of the students that come into our care each and every day. Our teachers, our custodians, our secretaries all need to know that. We sometimes aren't aware of the messages that we send. Kids are very sensitive to facial expressions and tone of voice, especially our traumatized children. They're looking to you for answers because they know if they see this stance, I'm going into my room, I'm hiding under the bed, I'm locking myself in. So when a teacher is sending mixed messages, oh, you did such a lovely job on your work. Sorry, Frank. I'm really proud of you. That kid's not hearing a word you're saying because that facial expression. So we have to help our teachers or any adult that's interacting with our kids understand that the facial expressions and the tone have to match. Oh, Todd, I'm so proud. You're taking notes, you're sitting all four on the floor. It's great. Thanks so much. Susan, I really, really like what you're doing. Your shoes are great, although I really like the other pair of the red Vans. You know? So again, it's how do we help people understand that communication piece is so very, very important with our traumatized kids. Again, those clear schedules, those protocols, supporting kids to self-regulate are very, very important things in the classroom. Demand reinforcement ratio. We're all social workers or teachers or therapists or counselors. What's the ratio that we need in order to change behaviors? Anyone? 1 to 5. 5 good reinforcers for every corrective one. The same thing with instructional demands. You should ask 5 knowns that the kid's going to be able to respond to, and then 1 unknown that's going to challenge them or make them do a little bit of brain sweating. And then you fade that. So once they start to experience that success and feel good about themselves, then you give them 3 knowns and 2 unknowns. And then you give them 2 and 3. Pretty soon you're giving them 1 known and 5 unknowns, and they're really feeling good about themselves because they know it. So those are important things. Easy to hard ratios, the same thing. Because our kids who have been traumatized don't have a voice. The importance of what I did introducing myself is making sure that kids know who they are and feel good about themselves. Your name, stating your name every morning. I'm Denise. This is how I feel. Gives that teacher a really good gauge about maybe I need to go and talk to Jean because she's not feeling so well today. So I need to find out what happened at home because I know there's some problems between mom and dad and there's a divorce pending. So I'm going to go touch base with Jean. Kids need to be able to articulate their goals. That's advocating for themselves. They need to know who they can ask for help, who's in their corner, because that's helping them learn to self-regulate and advocate for themselves. And these are strategies that we have to teach through direct instruction in the classroom with our traumatized kids. Alpha, beta commands. Teachers have a really hard time with this. They all want to be nice, especially at the elementary level. It's warm and cuddly and loving and everyone, hugs and all that kind of stuff. But once again, we send mixed messages. There are alpha commands. Sit down. Start your work. All 4 on the floor. Or there are beta commands. Oh, you want to sit down, okay? Do you mind getting started on your work? Okay. Oh, don't rock in your chair. Mixed messages. Kids need structure. They need that routine. They need to know what the expectations are of them. Dr. Hughley talked about your role in knowing your own trauma and your own buttons to push. There's new research that's really very provocative right now, and it's about emotional labor. You folks are the people that are doing the most emotional labor in our schools because you're dealing with such difficult issues. And it has to drain you. Like we heard on the TED Talk. After 10 years, he had to get out. You're exhausted. You're in this because you want to help kids, because you want to make a difference. But you have to take care of yourself. That emotional labor and mindfulness is very important. Knowing when you have to tag off and do a drain of yourself, or where you can't get in. You just can't do it. You need to ask for help and support. Because if you don't take care of you, then you can't take care of anyone else. And sometimes we fail to realize and recognize that. Social stories. Kids love to tell their story. What a great way to change behaviors or to find out. There was a great study that was done in a grant where kids took home the little disposable cameras and took pictures of their environment in their home. It was out of Penn State Harrisburg, and it's been published several times. Martha Strickland, I think. And so the kids in the elementary school took home cameras and took pictures of their family and everything, and then they got them developed, and then they wrote their social stories so that the teachers knew who they were, and then that could follow them, and people were aware of what their stories were. Social skills. It's very, very important. We have some really cool social skills curriculum that we utilize, but that we teach traumatized kids direct social skills. They're not going to learn the way typically developing kids learn social skills. They need direct instruction and opportunities to practice, not in your office, but in group settings, together, in the cafeteria, on the playground, in after-school activities, clubs and organizations. We talked about classroom rules. Incentive reward systems. You know, again, fading with positive rewards and helping kids to have time. Just like all kids can learn, our kids who are traumatized can learn if they're what? They're regulated. Their neocortex is around. They may learn in chunks, and so teachers may have to differentiate instruction. Most kids, this half of the room, can sit for 45 minutes. This third of the room might need to do 15 minutes and then a little choice activity or a little sensory break by carrying books, you know, heavy items down to the librarian and bringing more books back, or bouncing on a chair, or going and getting a drink, and the teacher has to control that because the teacher can start to see that frustration. So sensory integration is very, very important in dealing with traumatized kids. Alice, school safety. I have to do a little plug, I'm sorry. School safety is a passion of mine. We've all witnessed Columbine and Sandy Hook and different things. ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. We were trained, we had a team of 5 teachers, superintendent, myself, and our director of special education, trained to be ALICE trainers. And we walked through all of the ALICE training with the airsoft guns and everything with our staff in August. And then we rolled it out to our kids in December. We didn't use the guns or anything because we don't want to traumatize our kids. But we gave them information about what to do in an emergency situation, whether it be a gas leak or a hostage situation in the community, whether they be at the mall, and the incident at Monroeville Mall with the shooting the other day, or in a restaurant or in a movie theater like out in Utah. Give them control over what they have control. They responded so well to developmentally appropriate activities around ALICE because it's all about their safety, not just in the school, but in the home and in the community. When we were at ALICE training, Rita, one of our kindergarten and first grade social workers, there was a shooting in the community and impacted 8 of our kids. 8 of our kids. And so here we are at this active shooter ALICE training, and we get the call that our kids are impacted because there was a shooting in their apartment that evening. So those are the things and the realities that we deal with every day and that you deal with every day. We're taking our kids on a brain break walk during PSSAs to the safe zones or the rally points should we have to evacuate our school. We're empowering our kids to take charge of their safety in the school setting or in the community or in the mall or wherever they may be, and they are responding beautifully. Safety is everyone's number one priority, especially when it comes to our kids who are most vulnerable, who have experienced trauma in their life. Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here.
I got so excited when Deborah called me and said, "Yo, Susan." and I was just, in shock and awe, actually. I do have a PowerPoint because it's just how I communicate all the time. If you want a copy of it, I certainly invite you to email me. And yeah, here we go. I didn't put any fanciness in, pretty pictures or anything like that, because I only have a half an hour. Am I there? Okay. And did everybody know what this is called? Can anybody tell me what this is? Okay, wrong. But nice try. You did good. How was that? Did I model that right? Didn't you? Okay, how about another name? Okay, but actually the word that I heard that never I knew was that it is a kangaroo. Some high-tech wizard told me that, and I bought it, so there. I work in the student assistance program and have done so for over 20 years. Denise and I were, and many of your faces are familiar because of our work either in training or in our regional networking in Allegheny County. If we've not had the pleasure yet of meeting, someday soon. And I'm always glad because I can still say to people, we have gambling prevention dollars to fund SAP training. So just so you know. One of the things that Deborah required us to present to her in order to be vetted to come and speak with all of you today was what's our outline. And so these are the three things I want to do. I want to be very practical and also recognize that you all are the experts in this room. You're the ones that are in the trenches day in, day out, engaging with families as much as you can, talking with kids, helping kids become better, stronger, more resilient. And so I have some ideas that I want to share with you. But basically, I also want to hear from you about what's working. So one of the best resources that I'm familiar with, and if you're not, write it down, that's the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And it's nctsn.org. They are a major clearinghouse for the work that we do in schools with trauma and trauma-related emergencies. And there's many, many models out there. And any model that tells you this is all you need, you don't want to go with that model. There are trainers out there who will tell you, if you just did this right, you won't need anything else. And I find that suspect after all these years and all this gray hair that I manage to deal with on a monthly basis. But when you look at so what, when you think about the fact that 1 in 4 children attending our schools have been exposed to at least one traumatic event that affects learning and or behavior, that's a staggering amount. And more specifically, I was interested in where we were in terms of Pennsylvania and child maltreatment. And I think these numbers really speak for themselves. As I was networking, I love that word networking, it makes me feel so, 21st century, 26,944 reports to Childline in 2013. But look how many were substantiated, only 13%. And you can go any direction you'd like to go with that. but look at the reported number of females versus males, the percentage of substantiated reports that involve sexual abuse, with more girls being reported than boys. Over a quarter of our students experience physical abuse, and 12% experience neglect and or imminent risk. I'm curious, do you think that females are more often abused compared to males? No. Okay. Well, why do you think we see that? Because the boys don't tell. Because the boys hide it. But it comes out sideways. So my goal was to give you a sampling of what's out there. Many of you know already or have schools and school districts that have committed to a particular framework. But I think it's important to recognize that the trauma specificity for some of these approaches has been very well documented and studied. So let's take our first one. Pennsylvania right now is all about positive behavioral intervention and support, or the multi-tiered system of support. This is not a program. This is not, we're going to come in and do this in your school and everything will be better. And the things that I'm going to focus on in the first part of this, and would you give me like a 10-minute warning so that I can skip things accordingly? Thank you. Because you know how I love to talk. At any rate, what we're seeing is that all of these frameworks, all of these approaches are ways of changing adult behavior. We know from our work in crisis that administrators set the tone for the building. And if administrators are okay, fairly often most of the teachers are going to be okay, and kids will take their cues from those teachers. So we have to start at the top with that type of buy-in. But for years, one of the big complaints about education is we weren't using data to drive our decisions. Well, now, especially in Pittsburgh, you have a whole big infrastructure for giving you data and allowing you to make better decisions. But I think that that only supports good student behavior if you've started to look at staff behavior. I'm a PBIS external facilitator. I know Lillian very well in the Pittsburgh City Schools. I think that many of your districts and your schools have embraced this approach. The challenge, I think, is always how do we change staff behavior, because they're the ones that very often are going to be the ones that either exacerbate discipline problems or cause kids to move inward a little bit further. So, Dr. Hughley talked already about the public health model for prevention that positive behavioral intervention and support is based on. And it says that at the primary level, right, we are about preventing problem behavior. And all kids get curriculum, they get discipline policies, they get the student handbook, they get taught how to do things. We may even be fortunate enough to have positive alternative thinking strategies or life skills, evidence-based prevention programs in our schools. And yet we know that 5 to 10% of the kids, maybe more, aren't going to get it at that universal primary level. So what do we do at the secondary level? We're about preventing the frequency of the problem behavior. And at the top tier, tertiary, we want to prevent the intensity. So it kind of looks like this, right? This is the decade of the triangle, as you've heard me say, some of you, right? This is, we can't get away from the triangle. There's triangles everywhere. And in fact, they're really prisms now, because you got a side for academics, you got a side for behavior, you got a side, you know, it's just, I'm sure we can figure out other sides to go in there. But what I really liked, and I was happy to hear Yoda talk about the sanctuary model in Presley Ridge and a lot of places. Denise talked about embracing Sandra Bloom's model. And here's more information. I am not going to go through and try to teach you these models, but there are a few things that I think are really practical and that I wanted to share with you. The other thing that's out there is the International Institute for Restorative Practices, and I know Pittsburgh City just got a wonderful grant. It was from the Department of Justice, I believe, all right, to really come in and move us away from shaming discipline practices that we know feed violence on many different levels. And so it's really about teaching civility. Bruce Perry is one of my heroes because he has taken the brain for us, and Denise gave you a wonderful gesture for understanding how his model works. But basically, he talks about trauma as a neurobiological injury. And in some of the slides that Yoda showed you this morning, we were able to see that there's very definite structural changes in the brain. And what he says we need to do, and Denise explained so well, were those somatosensory interventions. And we want to target the part of the brain that was impacted by these insults that have happened over time, either through prolonged exposure or a massive event. And he says we need to do it every day. We need to do it in every grade, and everybody needs to be doing it. And in fact, when you merge that with our triangle, at the universal level, we are playing to the cortex, right? The part of the brain where there's executive functions. But it has to be calm. The other parts of the brain have to be calm in order for us to go to that place. The secondary interventions target not just the cortex, but also part of the limbic system, where we're teaching life skills. And then the bottom up, the intensive interventions, are the ones where we really need to control body function. So let me show you how this works, if I can. Okay, where did I put that there? Oh, there it is. So what we see is that the brainstem, as Denise said, controls a lot of our visceral functions. We don't think about them. They're automatic: breathing rate, heart rate, blood pressure. And the diencephalon he talks about as the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and the pineal gland. You must excuse me, I used to teach physiology and anatomy, and I just put it in because I enjoy it. The limbic system. I had a medical director once who said the limbic system was the site of the 5 F's. Food, fluid, fight, flight, propagation of the species. It works every time. If you didn't get it, it will catch up to you. You might want to edit that out, Frank. But what he really talks about, and I think that Denise gave you a real wonderful model for helping kids figure out how to regulate. That the hoodies oftentimes are about reducing stimulation so that I can calm my body down. And then, have they eaten? How motor aroused are they? Do they need to be bouncing on the ball? Are we giving them opportunities to interact with other kids on the playground, after school, in extracurricular activities, in the classroom, through social learning opportunities? And it's only through meeting each of those and calming those spaces that we can unlock the cortex. Now, I have copies of this. But I only brought 40. But what I like about this is it actually shows us where we are. So in order to really activate that cortex, we have to be calm. An adult talking slowly, directly, being present, allowing people to rock. It's okay. It's all about trying to de-escalate kids and get them into that place. Noise and confrontation are not going to work, and yet we still have teachers, particularly in our secondary schools, that will tell you what? I should learn, I should teach, the children should learn, that's it, case closed, you don't belong in my class if you're not willing to do that. And yet how traumatizing or re-traumatizing that is. And so no wonder we end up with the behaviors that we are seeing. Brainstem. our midbrain, our limbic system, ways of really being able to help kids activate the cortex is what this is all about. Where do you think, if you think kids are getting tier 3 supports, where do you think they live most of the time? Are they in calm? Are they in arousal or attention? Are they in alarm? Are they in fear? Or are they in terror? Where do you think they live most of their time if they're in that top tier of supports? Or you're doing intensive one-on-one work? Toward the right, right? And what I like about this particular piece is Bruce Perry really delineates fear from terror. And terror is a whole other ballgame because that's where we're not reacting, it's reflex. And so many of our kids get triggered back to terror. So ultimately, a typical path to reactions or to responses is we observe, the input comes in, the hypothalamus and the thalamus make sense of it, we process it, it kicks up to the higher brain, to the cortex, we evaluate our options, we make some plans and we take action. Except this is what happens when there's a traumatized brain, and that this danger short circuits all of the cortical work that needs to happen. So if we go back to our PBIS approach, and I didn't come up with this, but when you think about at the universal level, we're about getting the cortex to respond. In our targeted or tier 2 interventions, we're about calming the limbic system, teaching skills. And lastly, at the top tier, we are really targeting the brainstem, the thalamus, the hypothalamus. So that as you think about the parts of the brain, kids who are hyper-aroused need to learn how to do what? Calm. Kids who can't pay attention because they're frozen need to learn how to do what? Re-engage. And so as you think about this, I think this is a really helpful framework for saying everything has to work together, and we cannot, and you as social workers, myself as a school counselor, we can't let the silos be anymore. We have to be part of the solutions to tearing them down. So, safe touch, rhythmic activities, activate the brainstem, calm it down. When you think about the music and movement and playing music in the morning when kids are coming into school. I work with a high school now with PBIS, and the student voice that has emerged as a result of their work with PBIS has really done a lot of this kind of work, teaching us how to, respond and get that diencephalon calm is really important. And remember, the brain fatigues every 7 minutes. So we need to make sure that we're only giving this amount of information and then doing something different. The limbic system, this is where we're learning how to relate with each other, with peers, with adults, with parents. And this is where we really learn how to be good social citizens. One of the problems that I have with current bullying prevention initiatives is they're adult imposed and driven. And what we need to start to have happen is kids learning how to be civil, how to be with each other in positive ways. And I think that's where restorative practices is going to make a big difference. But you don't need a multi-million-dollar program to do it. No, with no offense to Pittsburgh, because I think the work that you're doing is going to be really trailblazing. One of the things that I had to learn in my career, and this might surprise you, I am a recovering sarcastic. I had a wonderful woman teach me once that sarcasm was not an effective way of disciplining high school seniors. And I still have the cleat marks on my back from it. But I do realize now that sometimes when we're stressed, our greatest humor and our greatest strengths can become our greatest weakness. And I think the point that Perry makes is you got to remember that it's not about age. It's about the stage that people are in their development. So now we have 25, 30, 35-year-old adolescents. But I'm not going to go there. A couple of things that are really on the horizon, and Brand here in Pittsburgh, as well as across the country, have done a lot of work with the evidence base for, is the SSET, which is a Tier 2 intervention. It is a skill-building group for students exposed to trauma. The Pennsylvania Association of Student Assistance Professionals just had a wonderful conference. It's the best one I've ever been to, and I don't say that every year. But they actually had clinicians from the University of Maryland come and do this training. You can download it off the internet. Teachers can do it. I would certainly suggest that you co-facilitate with them, but it's a skill-building group. And then CBITS, thank you. CBITS is more of an intensive intervention. The good news that I have for you is in partnering with the Center for Safe Schools out of the Center for Schools and Communities in Camp Hill, I think they are. They've given my colleague David Suda and I 2 scholarships to come to be trainers of trainers. So one of the things that we might be able to offer would be a training in CBITS, funded by Highmark. But don't tell UPMC. Can you take that out too, please? Jeff might not like it. But again, this is something you can download off the internet. It's free. And the CBITS program also needs to be trained, and I would only put that in the hands of a really good clinician, such as yourselves. Now, how do we use PBIS then to support students' mental health? And I realize that this is hard to see, but I think that you see fairly clearly that we're weaving social and emotional learning into the entire framework, that we're about teaching kids how to behave instead of teaching them not to do. And I don't know, did you notice this since you started your career, that the definition of fair changed? From every kid gets the same thing no matter what to every child gets what they need. And that's a whole paradigm shift. That's a whole paradigm shift. But I can make this available to you if you want to take a look at it. One of the most important things in this green zone is getting 75 to 80% of your staff on board and willing to do it. And one of the biggest barriers is we now have a resurgence of technology coming into the schools. We're going to become an iPad school. We're going to become an Apple school. And the teachers are trying to get up to speed on that, and they're not, again, paying attention to some of these more important things that could make their classrooms healthier places and where the test scores could really go up. In terms of your own experience, I would say that we've been advocating for decades, dare I say, about the need for social and emotional learning, and yet what are the 3 things that drive most school budgets? Well, not at Baldwin, Whitehall, but what are the 3 things that drive most school budgets? Would you say one of them is sports?
Actually can't say that.
Would number 2 be standardized testing? And make sure those test scores go up. And what would be the 3rd? Transportation, enrollment. Well, you still have your own buses. I mean, come on, you could sell those and make a pretty penny. But the point being that most school boards don't see a need for this. Now, I recognize that I'm teaching to the choir, but some things that I think PBIS framework does with a good student assistance program is that it gives us many more options for Tier 2 supports. And I also think that when you think about things that we've always tried to do in student assistance, particularly around school policy, I think that what it does is it gives us a mechanism or a framework for responding and doing better and better and better year after year. So that we get to places up here where we do have kids on safety plans. And I hope we don't have anybody doing no suicide contracts anymore, because the literature out there is very clear. They can be dangerous, but they are definitely not helpful. Questions about this much? So I'm looking at big picture stuff. You know, mirror neurons really are the way that a lot of us still learn, but particularly children. And that when you think about those mirror neurons, we have to walk our talk, because that's what kids are seeing. So how do we help our staff recognize that, yeah, you can have a bad day, and it's okay to apologize if you're having a bad day. I mean, kids will generally say, oh, you know what, we knew that, and we just let you go. How do we help faculty and students really tune into each other, to the nonverbals? Because that's 75% of prevention. A lot of these other things are things that you already know, but one of the hardest things to do is break this, particularly with people who went to school to teach subjects and not kids. Oh, I didn't know I did this. Oh, well. So what can one person do? If you take nothing else away from you today, and I've been saying this since like 1990, building on strengths requires that you identify them first. And a number of wonderful resources and literature tells us time and time again that we want to find those islands of competence where kids really do get out of whatever chaos they're living in, and they're able to go to and get restored. So is it reading? Is it playing basketball? You know, where are those things, and how do we build on them? And always holding that vision of hope, which is change is possible. Positive is possible. And, you know, I like to draw a distinction between optimism and hope. A friend of mine, a rabbi, he was a rabbi at Hillel. He was the director, and now he's in New York. And at any rate, Rabbi said to me, we are not, as Jews, an optimistic people. And I said, oh, go on. And he said, no. He said, but we are a hopeful people. Optimism means that we just say it's all going to work out, no problem. He said, but hope really means that if we work together, a positive outcome will come. The other thing that there's a lot of literature being done now on the concept of grit. Have you read about grit? I think it's fascinating that we have to teach kids how to hang in there and how to work hard and how to surmount challenges. It's just instant total gratification ain't always true in real life. So as you think about these islands of competence, I don't want you to misunderstand that we're trying to dumb down the curriculum, but we're trying to tailor this to meet the individual needs of kids. And then finding that in this trusting, safe relationship, yes, I can be successful. There's nothing better. And all of you in this room have served as a caring adult for kids. You know, one of your greatest mentors in the field of social work was Dr. Mary Pfeiffer. And Mary Pfeiffer wrote lots and lots and lots of books. She wrote one on immigrants and refugees, and she said if you want to be an effective helper, you do three things. The first thing you do is offer hope. And hope really isn't saccharin or sucrose oriented. It really is about saying it's going to be work, but we're going to not stop figuring out how to try to make things better. The second thing that she said is you point a direction. Where do you want to go with this? What about this? What about this? We explore options, but the person makes the choice. And then the third thing she says we need to do is teach skills to help people move beyond the crisis. In trauma work, sometimes it's putting language to what happened. Common strengths of maltreated youth include they know what happened. They are responding to respect. They recognize when you're being real with them. They are capable of great loyalty. They are concerned about fairness and justice, and they have very strong survival skills. And they want to seek personal control. They're open to change as long as we're not threatening the brainstem, as long as we're not threatening their survival. And Gordon Hodes talks about this. He's a psychiatrist that consults with our Pennsylvania Department of Human Services. So using these strengths-based assumptions are really at the core of our work. That a manipulative child is really very out of control, that behavior is usually not intentional, and we've been taught to ask the question, WTF? What's the function? What's underneath it? The calmer and the more grounded we are, they will begin to learn to mirror that. And I think one thing that I've learned even with some of my colleagues is that we have to find ways to help people save face. That we're not about humiliation and shame, but we're really about empowerment. So what? Trauma-sensitive schools will benefit all children. So what's good for our traumatized kids are good for all kids. Not just those that we know the history of, but those whose trauma will never be clearly identified, or those who might be impacted by their traumatized classmates. And as we talked this morning and in the work this afternoon, we are a central community for children and families. And the work that you do is very, very important. One of my favorite writers is Judith Herman. And in her book, Trauma and Survival, she talks about the work that working with trauma is really an honor and a privilege. But it's about coming face to face with both the vulnerability in our natural world, as well as the capacity for evil in human nature. And in order to do that successfully, you've got to have your outlets, and you've got to have the things that make your heart sing. Here's some references. I do know that Bruce Perry is coming to do a big workshop for Presley Ridge sometime in April. And wow, I'd really like to go, but I don't have any money, just like you. Thank you so much for the work that you do on behalf of children and families. It is an honor to work with you.
Right, I've been in several roles, cinnamon rolls, jelly rolls, dinner rolls. I'm so mad when I make mistakes like that. Well, I want to thank you all for having me. It's an honor to be here today. So I also wanted to say all the smart stuff went out the window because this is not my area of expertise. So all of the folks they were quoting, you can chalk that up. I hope you took good notes because you're just going to get the practical stuff at this point. And ladies, I thank you. You are hard acts to follow. I hate being last when that happens. And so I want to introduce myself. My name is Virginia Hill. I have the tremendous honor of being a principal in a neighborhood that I actually grew up in. And so I'm very familiar with where our students live. My parents still live on Lincoln Avenue. Can't get my mom and dad to move from there, but it's okay. They're still there. My mom is actually an OASIS tutor within our school. And so it's an honor because so many people poured into my life and helped me to become the person that I've become. I'm very familiar with trauma because of my own experiences. It's not about me right now. We're going to talk about some of the things that we're doing at Pittsburgh Lincoln. But I want to thank some of my colleagues who are here in the room. I get to see Dr. Wallace in here, my friend. I was so many familiar. Man, how you doing? It's good to see you. Was just talking about you. And Miss Jess back there from our Homewood Children. Hi, Miss Jess. I love you. Glad to see you here. I brought two very important people with me. The best social worker in Pittsburgh Public Schools, Miss Monica White, is here. Miss Nicolette Lazar, who I just met this year, but I'm telling you, she's in my heart. I'm keeping her. She's from Wesley Spectrum. She's actually in our school, and she's here to support us today. Support me just in case I mess up. They're going to clean it up. Sorry. This is a picture of our school, and I wanted, again, our community, our school's demographics. We have about 266 students, K to 5. I have 8 white students. That's an accomplishment in our side of town. I have 2 students from Tonga. I have 2 students from Peru, and Peru, and the rest of my students are African American students. And so we're excited about all of our students that we do have. 21 teachers in our school, 2 paraprofessionals. The challenge every day, I feel as though I fall short, and I challenge myself every day. You know where our kids are from. I'm not going to go back. They told you, these are the children that we deal with. Everything they explained to you, that's who we see. That's who shows up with us every single day. So how do we address that? How do we make a culture and environment that our children come in, they feel loved, feel stable, feel supported, they have that nurturing? What do we do? And so at Lincoln, we're in our beginning stages. We haven't arrived yet, but we do have some things in place. And so we have teachers, they have this, our kids are coming to us, and I'm looking on the wall as I'm sitting around the room, and I see achievement gap. It's not an achievement gap. My children are no less smart than a child in Squirrel Hill or Upper St. Clair or Mount Lebanon or Fox Chapel. My kids are very intelligent. My kids have lacked opportunities, and it's a disparity. It's not a gap. It's a disparity. You start giving my babies those same challenges and opportunities, they will also achieve at a great level. And so I'm very passionate when I talk about what my kids can do. So we are focusing, and we sit as practitioners right in the center of No Child Left Behind. And we have work that we have to do, because not only do we have to deal with our babies are coming to us, they're not reading on level. Some of our kids come from kindergarten, couldn't tell you what a letter A was. And so that's where we have to meet them right there. The amazing thing about my babies, I'm going to tell you, they're resilient. They might not know what the A is about in September. By November, they're reading. Now, tell me that's powerful. That's picking up ground, and that's what we're seeing our kids do. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We can't do it in and of ourselves. We can't do it by ourselves. We're not that knowledgeable. I'm not that smart. As much as I'd like to believe I'm a dynamic leader, I don't have it going on like that. I can't carry 266 children, plus pre-K. Put them together, that's 300 kids. I can't do it by myself. Partnership is huge, and I'm ready to go to the next one. So we have, and I know you may not be able to see it because it's kind of cut off, but we have a 3-tiered mental health prevention partnerships that take place in our school. Not every child needs the most intensive support, and not every child is going to be helped by something that this little corny piece, you got to give them something. They need a little more than that little piece. We have to give them something. So we have a 3-tiered structure at our school that takes place in our school. Big partners that we do have are Wesley Spectrum, Glade Run Family Links, Gwen's Girls. Homewood Children's Village is a huge support. That's where Miss Jess comes in, does a huge work with our children. They provide academic and behavioral support. We also have the community folks that are in place with our churches. We pull from Mount Eric Baptist Church, Lincoln Avenue Church of God, Penn Hills Alliance, and we're just beginning a partnership with St. James Church. It's down the street from our school. We also have a partnership with the Kingsley Center, and also our own school community work as teachers that we have to do. Because every day, I say I'm from the community, I know I'm from the neighborhood, but I have to exhibit a certain amount of white privilege to exist right here, so you could call me up and ask me to come talk to you. I have to be able to roll around in that world as well. And it's how soon we forget that I lived in a roach-infested house and wore dirty clothes to school with my own nappy head, and I want to come judge someone else when I walk into my own school. And so there's where I challenge myself every day to remember, there but the grace of God, that would be me. That someone took time to pour into my life to make sure that I become someone special. That's why I stand in front of you today, and no other reason why. And I'm ready to go to the next. Triangles. Can't get away from them. Or triangles. And you know that Maslow triangle. Triangle. We know our kids come in, and I don't have the nice little laser pointer, but their psychological needs. Our babies may have been up all night because they were hell-raising in their house with the big brawl fight or party. The card party went down, and they didn't get a nice sleep at all. You know all of this. They told you this already. They don't feel safe. And I remember growing up in an environment where my parents fought, and I didn't feel safe when they were in that house. And I was wondering, in the room with the door closed, what was he doing to my mother? I didn't know. And so that I experienced that. I know exactly where my kids are with that. And so this is where we try to do our biggest work, is developing that culture. I want the first faces that they see are the adults that they trust. We're at the doors. We're in the cafeteria in the morning. Good morning. How are you this morning? Good morning. Good morning to you. How are you this morning? What you do last night? You know, that's where we are. Miss Nicolette, Monica, we're at the doors. We're greeting or giving them kisses on the head. Before they left me today, I said, oh my goodness, a whole week away from you. I'm going to miss you. What I'm going to do without you? They just don't know. But it's all right. But they need to think. And they come back Monday, April 6th. Dr. Hill, you okay? I know you was missing us. I sure was as I slept in. I sure did. But that's where we are. Can you go back to that? I want to stay there. I'm not there. Wait a minute, I got to turn my notes with me. One of the things we like to build off of, the article that you have, one of the things that hurt me the most, in her first few sentences, she called my children low-income families. That hit me. My kids are more than low-income families. Yeah, we know they don't have the money. We know they're not rich. My babies are resilient. If they can come in there and halfway sit in the classroom through some of the stuff they went through the day before, the night before. I wish I would have brought Monica's letter. If I'd have thought to print your letter out. We had a young lady that dictated to her what happened to her on her way prior to getting to school, not even getting to the school bus, that she was beat up, thrown down the steps, then beat up again and kicked, and then had to go get on the school bus. That's what she experiences almost every day. And she's resilient enough to bring herself into a classroom and have the wherewithal to try to halfway do some work that day. Now, I have teachers, if they got thrown down the steps and kicked by their husband, they'd be calling me on the phone, talking about, hey, gotta get on town for a PFA. I'm going to be off for the rest of the week. And my babies can come in and do the thing. They're resilient. And so I'd like to talk about some of the things that I know that I intrinsically try to build in, that I need to be more transparent about in my school. It's building that social competence. And I build off of, I'm quoting from Macmillan and Reed, and I can send this stuff to you. And Krovitz, social competence, we try to build that social competence in with our children, but we need the help of our partners to be able to do that. Also, problem-solving skills. Sometimes our kids just know, how do I deal with this problem? I don't know how to cope. I haven't, all the developmental things, I haven't been there long enough to know how to deal with things that are developing appropriate. I've been drugged in utero. I come out, my brain isn't developed properly. I don't know how to cope and deal with things at a normal level. I'm still reacting as a 3-month-old, and I'm actually 5. You know, it's really difficult, and this is what we are seeing. And so autonomy. A lot of our kids do what they see other people do. We want to build into them that you are an amazing being. We start off our morning with affirmations. Your brain is the most powerful computer in the world. When they say, when I'm the me I was destined to be, I am awesome. I am a winner. If it's to be, it's up to me. And I'm learning to do it now. I'm forgetting a few of them, but we make our kids say that to themselves every day. Those affirmations are huge, and they've been huge in turning around the culture of the school, because the children they hear so many other negative things. I could tell you some of the things that they hear about themselves on a day-to-day basis, how they're talked to. Some kids don't know that their name isn't bitch. It might be somewhere in there. And sense of purpose and future building. Having kids know that you can be this, that, or the other thing somewhere down the line in the future. These are the things that we try to build in at Lincoln with the programs that we have. I'm ready to move on, and I know I don't have a lot of time. So I want to talk about our partnerships that we do have in our 3 tiers. We have, and this is a blessing to me, it's not of my own doing. I've been so fortunate from our district that they've given us these resources. And so I stand today just in awe of what I have to be able to work with to support our children. Wesley Spectrum is huge. They're a huge supporter, and they're our tier 3. These are our most intense children who need the most supports. These are the ones that are flipping out. They are running through the hallways. They're jumping up on desks and kicking other kids in the face. This is where we stick these children. They give them those intensive supports to counter up those disruptive behaviors. Excuse me. They also, and you can read, I'm not going to read this to you. One of the things that we really need to do is I sat here, I said, I wish I would have brought my teachers here today just to hear you 2 ladies. It's so important because as practitioners, we forget because teachers are caught up in their VAM, and I don't want to get fired. My evaluation is tied into this, and they just want the kids to sit and get. They don't have time to do all this touchy-feely stuff. And it's bringing them back into what's really important, because if you don't do some of this touchy-feely stuff, you're not going to get them to the place where we're co-constructing that learning environment. And so they are on site. They are on site. They have a suite within our school. We converted a classroom into a mental health suite, and they are a tier 3 mental health provider. They provide case management for our families, access to food, clothing. They've paid people's rent, provide transportation for them to appointments, because that's a big piece. We have parents who, we know these kids need medication. We may have a parent who sells it. We have a parent who lost it. We have a parent who, I forgot to fill the prescription. And the child can't show up and be the best person that they are. You know, you're a tree cutter. We can't send you to work without your axe. And that's what's happening to our children a lot of times. And so they also do crisis management 24/7. They go to med checks and also med appointments. They provide behavior management through classroom observations to support teachers. And they also support the child in the classroom sometimes on site, because we know we want them in the classroom learning. We can't pull them out all the time. And a lot of times that's what teachers want to do. They want to send the problem to somebody else. You deal with it, and if it was up to them, probably be 3 kids in the room learning. But you didn't hear me say that. Don't tell me. Thank you. I'm ready for my next slide. No, that's all right. Our tier 2 provider. These are kids that are not as intensive, but they may find themselves in chronic, she's bullying me, and they're constantly into conflicts and issues. These may be children who have experienced trauma. We had a family that it was crazy. We had one gentleman who was murdered in Wilkinsburg not so long ago. He was the father of 3 of our students, the brother to one of our students, and the uncle to a multitude of others. And so we were heavily hit by his loss and his death. We had several children show up to us devastated. And I thank God for John O'Connell. I overlooked you, John, and Dara, and Tom. Thank God for John. He came over to the school and made sure that those kids were supported, called in resources from Family Links, what we'll talk about later. But Glade Run also provides those services as well. They provide the therapeutic support. They give these students those 1 hour a week sessions that they meet with them. But we also have another arm to Glade Run that works in our emotional support classroom, which is also a therapeutic support classroom, where there's an on-site therapist there that provides a different set of students whose IEP says they need to be there. These are students who have emotional support needs. They get therapy right on. So Glade Run was both of those programs. They also have more intensive supports through wraparound services that could go home with the children, because sometimes our kids need help at home as well. And I'm ready for the next slide because I'm running out of time. Again, Family Links is another one of our programs that we have. It's our Tier 1 program. This is where we put our students, not everyone, so our whole group students. We know that there are bigger group issues that are occurring in the school with bullying. Our girls can be so mean at times, and cliquish. So we have to address some of those girl issues, or possibly hygiene, or, and health. He said, because we got some hygiene problems. We're also having an issue right now with our first grade students and sharing of food. This whole snack thing is like turns into World War III. Over, you didn't give me some of your zebra cake. I gave you some of my hot fries yesterday. You ain't gonna give me none of your zebra cake. And it's World War III. So we have to teach the kids when to share, and because you give something to somebody, you can't expect them to give things back. And I'm trying to tell a teacher, you have to teach. I said, but we have adults, that don't do that well. I gave you $50, so we do, adults struggle with this, so we're trying to help kids to understand that concept of giving and sharing. So we're working with Family Links to do this work right here. That's awesome. Okay, Gwen's Girls, we have Gwen's Girls. Did I see my Gwen's Girl lady in here? She in here? No, I thought I did. Now I'm seeing people, apparitions and stuff, ghosts of people. Gwen's Girls works with our 4th and 5th grade girls once a week. They come in and really focus on the human development, that positive body image. You know how girls get, my boobs aren't big as her, my butt is flat, and I'm skinny, I'm too fat, all the issues we have as women. And the media doesn't help our girls at all, and we have to counteract that. And we do this through Gwen's Girls. Our African American girls, we struggle with our hair, our color, and we try to address those things through Gwen's Girls. They really help support us with that. And they also help with that 6th grade transition, because elementary school is hugely different from middle school. Juvenile probations, and this is another one of our Gwen's Girls, Family Links. These are our Tier 1s. This is a Tier 1 support. They meet with our 4th and 5th grade girls and boys bi-monthly, and they're taught refusal skills. And this is really difficult for some of our children, because in the home, like, some of our parents blaze marijuana like it's like the thing to do. It's like nothing wrong, and we're telling them it's wrong in school, and the kids are like, they're put in a space. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse is common. And so we're teaching them those refusal skills and talking to them about health, just general health and well-being, brain, mind, body, spirit. And so our juvenile probations and program does help us to do that. Looking at the clock. One of my big supports, a huge, we have a huge support with Homewood Children's Village. We have 3 social work interns and 3 education specialists that are on site every day within our school, and their faces are so important. Our social work interns, this is another Tier 1 strategy, but that mentoring, sitting down with them in the cafeteria, sitting and having lunch with them, they're a huge supporter of what we do at Lincoln. Our school culture and climate would not be where it is without Homewood Children's Village and Wesley Spectrum. They are huge supporters of the work that we do. And so the social work interns, they pull kids for individual time to talk to them, help them, again, with some of the puberty, hygiene, mental health, social skills, academic things. They're trying to counsel them, and so they do that. Our education specialists help our teachers to build in small groups so that they can do this differentiated instruction. Everybody doesn't learn the same way. Some kids need that smaller instructional touch, and so they're able to do it there. We have a coordinator who runs our program, and it is awesome. Honestly, they have helped us shape our school culture with their program, and so we are in debt to the Homewood Children's Village and the work that they do at Pittsburgh Lincoln. You came in right on cue. Dr. Wallace, it's good to see you. We have also other community partners, and this must not have been the one I fixed. Mount Eric Baptist Church, again, another huge supporter because they provide additional remediation and acceleration for our students in our after-school programming. They run all of our after-school programming. Lincoln Avenue Church of God. Now, it's something when you work in a trauma-laden area. Teachers are traumatized, and they need support. And we are thankful to have a support of a church that she sends us prayers. I'm sorry, take that, edit that, take that off. Yes, we need to pray. They are really nourishing us as teachers. And so we are thankful to have the partnership of Lincoln Avenue Church of God. Penn Hills Alliance Church has just adopted us. Our children come in. A lot of times they'll wear a filthy, dirty uniform. We have to clean and wash their clothes. And without their support, we wouldn't even have the clothing to re-put on the children so that they could get it together. And we'll take their dirty clothes off, wash those, but then we have something we could put on them that's clean, dry, smells good. The kids feel great about that. And another, Mount Airy and Kingsley Center run summer programs in Lincoln School. The Kingsley Center runs the Freedom Schools program in our school, which really focuses on, for our African American children, those issues centered, African-centered work, and really community, social skill development, building community. So we lean heavily on the work that they've done as well. And I'm out of time. Okay. One last plug. Dr. Hughley, if you don't know, Dr. Hughley's wife is my boss, and I love her dearly. She is an amazing woman, very knowledgeable in the work that she does with us as principals. One of the books that she recommended for us is Schools for All Kinds of Minds, and what it helps us to focus on is children don't all learn the same. And a lot of times as teachers, we focus on teaching. What do I look like when I come into the classroom? And it's one of the pet peeves I have as a principal. I don't care what you do when I walk into your classroom, because you're going to put a dog and pony show on for me. What I care about is what your kids are able to do. That's who I'm focused on. So I want to know what your kids can do. And this is what Schools for All Kinds of Minds really helps us to focus on. And it's really challenging teachers to think about some of those practices that we, me included, are doing that are hindering our students. Because I need a check sometimes too. I lose it from time to time. But again, I'm always able to come back to my babies and say, man, I messed up. I love you. You love me still? And get it together. Because we do talk that way. That's crazy. I love you. Okay. That's what they say to me. I'm over my time, but we do a lot. We do have the technology integration in our school because we know we need to engage our students in a different way. That's the academic piece, which I know I don't want to bore you with. I have my contact information. The power of partnership is what I want to say is that we did become a star school because of all of our partners. We would not have been able to do it without Homewood Children's Village, Family Links, Glade Run, Gwen's Girls, Tongue Twisted. We wouldn't have been able to do it without all of our partners to get this work done. Again, I'm not that talented. Don't have it going on like that. I'm just fortunately blessed to always have been helped. God always provides where you need that support. And so that's where I stand as a principal, and I hope you were able to take something away from this. Thank you.